Hey there, welcome back to another video. I'm Ramona, and we are going to be doing some Reddit stories today. What is the weirdest story you know to be true? Before I get started though, I wanted to mention that I have some new material up on Amazon.com. Naoa and the Horse Who Had Secrets is a children's chapter book. The first time I've ever tried to write a children's story. So if you know someone who would be interested in that, go check it out. It's over on Amazon.com. All of my stuff's over on Amazon because, free publishing and crap. Also, I'm doing a whole slew of coloring books. Some I drew and some is AI art. Most of the new stuff is going to be AI art because arthritis sucks. But again, go check those out if you're interested in coloring or you know someone who is. I try to keep them as low priced as possible. So anyway, thank you for listening and watching, and let's get into the video now. Ready? The topic is, what is the weirdest story you know to be true? Growing up, my older siblings used to say I was adopted as a joke. That turned out to be true. There's probably more to that story, but, well, I'm hoping there's more to the story, but they didn't post it there. I have a bunch of crazy but true ghost stories. Also, I had a vision of my deceased great aunt 24 hours before I found out my dad was dead. Also, I randomly smelled that great aunt's perfume in my house the night before my father's father was rushed to the hospital, where he died a few days later. These are all true stories. Me and my friend nearly got human trafficked in Prague. Still seems like a dream. We got lost in a taxi on our way to the city center. We ended up getting out and trying to find the club we were looking for as the fare was getting too high. We were on the seedy outskirts in the dark. This woman said she could help. She took us through this plain, rough wooden door into a makeshift bar. No till, planks of wood for the bar, etc. She got a drink from a man at the bar, didn't pay, and said she needed to go and find her female friend. The beer tasted strange. There was a woman crying in the corner, and I just knew something was seriously wrong with the whole situation. I finally persuaded my friend that we needed to get the heck out of there. So as we were leaving, though, through the makeshift door, she was running towards us with two massive, scary men. I've never run so fast in heels in all of my life. The fastest living thing on the planet lives in goo. I set my wallet on the car and drove away. I live in a medium-sized city, downtown. 8 hours later, I am returning home and say to my wife, "Have you seen my wallet?" I look on the street right after saying this, and the wallet is right here, right there in the middle of the street. I get it. Everything, including $200 cash, is in place. My wallet sat in the middle of a busy street all day with hundreds of cars and tens of pedestrians passing by it. Edit. The only explanation I have is that it was wet. It was a wet and rainy day, and this might have had something to do with it. Bodies rot in the sea. They break at the joints, so the foot breaks off and the shoes help them stay afloat. That's disturbingly interesting. I'm curious what. Okay, whoops, wrong. Sorry, wrong one. Typing this on the phone, so apologize for errors, autocorrect, and otherwise. In Nova Scotia, Canada, there is only one power company and is regulated by the government. Every time they want to raise the rates, they have to petition the government for approval. A couple years back, after petitioning the government for something like 8% rate increase, Nova Scotia Power was sued by the citizenry on accusations of price gouging. The citizenry won the case, and the NS Power was ordered to pay several $million to their customers. After the ruling, the Power changed their price request from 8% to 12% in order to cover the cost of the trial ruling, and the government approved that request. I was told the story by family and friends still living in Nova Scotia this last year. I can't find any news articles relating to it, though, and I can't find the ruling itself. I probably shouldn't have posted this in this thread, since I don't know it to be true. I do, however, trust my family. Make of that what you will. My friend was taking a shit while his girlfriend started trimming his ball hair. They are a weird couple, my friends. They started bragging about it one night to my other friend, who was like, "What the fuck? How awkward is that?" That's pretty awkward. Yeah. I there are some people out there that love to overshare stuff. The fact that Edgar Allan Poe and Edgar Allan Poe's one and only novel, the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, published in 1883, told the grim tale of a crew of sailors stranded out at sea after a storm, slowly starving to death. One of the sailors, Richard Parker, suggests the four of them draw lots and cannibalize the loser. Richard Parker draws the short straw and is cannibalized. Fast forward to 1884, and the sinking of a yacht leaves four survivors once again stranded at sea. Richard Parker, this time the name of a cabin boy, was once again cannibalized for food, except that this story is true. There have been 2 other deaths of men named Richard Parker at sea. I highly suggest you stay the fuck out of the water if that's your name. This kid in my brother's kindergarten class was murdered by his mom. She chopped off his head with an axe, and the cops found her calmly walking down the street, all covered in blood in the middle of the night. I'm still not sure my brother knows what really happened. The school told his class the kid moved or something, and my parents played along. I found a human tooth in the side pocket of my purse. Root and all, even had a filling. I have no idea whose it was, or how, or why. It was creepy. Has to be microchip inside. I'm thinking you may be an enemy of the state situation soon. Well, this happened to me. A kid in my older brother's class took a liking to my brother at the beginning of the year and was really creeped around him all freshman year. During our summer break, we went on a road trip, but my dad stayed home for work. One night when he came home, our garage door had been forced open and there was a bike in our garage. He crept into the house and came upon this kid holding a pile of all the underwear in the house. Kid had a fetish for wearing other people's underwear and had broken into other people's homes before. I believe that kid goes to Cornwall now, though. One time, my friend and I, both females, were sitting in a seedy bar located in a pretty bad neighborhood as we were just chilling out drinking beer. This young lady comes in and sits down next to us at the bar. We start talking to her, and it turns out she is a prostitute. She's just scared because she didn't make enough money that night. She calls her pimp to come get her. Then she tries to talk to my friend and I into doing what she does. There was another group of people at the bar, and then just us. When the other people left, I told my friend we should go because I didn't want to be outside when her pimp came to get her, since the area was dark and the neighborhood was bad. I was scared she had a gun or her pimp did, and that they would do something and would try to do something. Not sure if she really was a prostitute, though, but it was a true story. I couldn't find a link, but I think I read this in Uncle John's bathroom reader. The story was a toddler fell out of a fairly high-up apartment window and happened to land on a stranger walking below, like saving the child from death or serious injury. A few years later, the same kid falls out of the same window and lands the exact same guy again. That's pretty crazy. And someone replies with, Uncle John's bathroom reader number 8, if memory serves. I've got that book, and the story is in there. So if you guys want to go look it up, there you go. A few years ago, I was at a subway station with my then girlfriend waiting for the train. We had been seeing each other for a few weeks and had not yet met either's circle of friends. We got on the subway when it arrived in the station and stood near the doors as people filed into the car. As we were waiting for the subway doors to close, I looked up and saw my buddy Fernando walking by. I waved and yelled his name at the same time that my girlfriend waved and yelled his name too. Fernando and a dude right next to him look in my direction and wave back smiling. My girlfriend and I both look at each other at the same time and say, How do you know Fernando? Turns out her friend Fernando and my friend Fernando, 2 separate people, were walking next to each other as they were leaving the station when my girlfriend and I spotted them at the same time. Strangest coincidence I've ever encountered in my life. I was at a party when I met a person who revealed they effed up their life story, later confirmed from a friend of the person. She was adopted, grew up in northern Canada, married, and had kids. Years later, she found out her birth family. She found her birth family. Turns out she married her brother. They stayed married for a bit, but it did eventually fall apart. Not because of the brother-sister thing. I was completely enthralled listening to her. That's an odd thing. I've heard of that sort of stuff before. It always kind of freaks me out. Just as my friend finished his parallel parking on his test, a trash can flew into the front window of the car, causing him to fail the test. That would be really shitty luck. So my friend's friend, let's say Susan, was dog sitting for, let's say Mark, who lived in Chicago. Mark's dog is an ancient Great Dane who's half-blind and arthritic. On day 3 of Susan's dog sitting, she comes into Mark's apartment and finds the dog has died. Susan flips out. She's obviously intensely worried that Mark will blame her and it will ruin their friendship. But she does the adult thing and calls him. Jasper died. There was silence. It happened last night, and I'm really sorry. I wasn't here. I found him this morning. He was in his bed like he fell asleep. Mark sighs. Okay, he says. Can you just do one thing for me? Yeah, absolutely anything. Can you just take him to the vet and see why? Yeah, Mark, of course. Only when Susan gets off the phone does she realize that she is in Chicago, doesn't have a car, and doesn't have the money for a taxi. And how are you going to have money to take him to the vet? There is literally only one way she is going to get Jasper to the vet before he starts to decay, and that is to take him on the subway. Fortunately, she finds a massive duffel bag and just kind of stuffs Jasper into it. She zips it up and takes him on the L. Great Danes are obviously huge. Susan is not. So she's struggling just to keep his bag off the ground, much less walk with him. She starts down the stairs to the platform, and every step she can hear Jasper's bones crack against the ground. Hey, you need a hand? This guy says. No, she says. Walks down another step. Crack, crunch. Oh, come on, here, let me help you out a little bit. The guy says. Before she can object, the guy easily lifts the bag off of her shoulder. He helps her down to the platform, and they start chatting. So, what's in the bag? Oh, she can't very well tell him it's a dead dog, so she lies. It's computer equipment. No, really, what for? She has to lie again. For weather instruments. For my job. I'm a meteorologist. None of these things are true. They keep walking and talking and realize that they're going to the same place. The train arrives. Masses of people shuffling off. Masses of people shuffling on. All of a sudden, the guy spins around, shoves Susan to the ground, and leaps onto the train, still carrying the bag. Susan looks up, shocked at what's just happened. The doors slide close, and the guy turns around, big shit-eating grin on his face, and up nods at her. I had no idea what happened when he opened the bag to find, not computer components, but the stare-mangled body of a Great Dane staring up at him. I really hope it was on the train, though. And just for context, your friend is a liar. You are a liar. This is a famous urban legend. It could be, but it's still funny. Well, not funny. It's more like okay, it's funny. Couple. A couple I know about a very young Yorkshire Terrier, and they were all on their way home. They stopped by a field to let him get a run outside of a car for a while. Unfortunately, some bird of prey saw it and nabbed the dog. Trauma, children crying, so they went back to the breeder and bought another little terrier. The dog died the day after, smashed with a frozen chicken in their freezer. That is terrible. I hope that one's not true. Some guy at my high school was really demure and quiet, used to shit on things whenever he was drunk. I can't remember all the incidents, but one of them was on the side of someone's caravan. I have a picture of one of my professors holding me as a baby. Turns out he was a grad student with my dad, in school on a different continent. It's a very small world. Not as exciting, but I had a picture of my 8th grade teacher holding me as a baby. He and my parents camped out at the same campground on summers. It's weird because we had moved several times, including a different state, and we were living somewhere new when I had him for a teacher. I went on vacation in Mexico with my family when I was in 4th grade. We met another family on vacation while shopping in some city, which I forgot, about 45 minutes from the resort we were staying at. The family had the same structure as ours. My mother and a father in the early 40s, a son my age, and a daughter the same age as my sister. The family was from California, but we were all from Chicago. On the last day of our vacation, we realized that same family was staying in the room directly diagonal to ours. We ran into each other while checking out, as we were checking out too. Our families chatted a bit, then said our goodbyes and parted ways. We again ran into them at the airport of Mexico. We sat down to have something to eat at the food court, and they were just a couple of tables over. Nothing too crazy here. We both checked out at the same time, so running into each other at the airport was nothing unbelievable. Here's where the shit gets weird. Fast forward a month. Summer has ended, and it's time to start my first day of 4th grade. I walk to the bus stop at the end of my street, and who the F do I see? The same kid I met in Mexico. He looks at me, and I look at him. Both of us are truly WTF'd. We ride the bus together, and he's in the same effing class as me. Turns out that family moved into the house directly diagonal from ours. They didn't even mention while on the vacation they were moving to Chicago. Apparently, it was a very sudden move, due to the father's job being relocated. That's a lot of coincidences there. Yeah, totally. I was talking to my dad one day about my grandfather a couple of days after his death. I found out he and his brother were raised in a Catholic orphanage in Brooklyn. I asked about his parents. My great-grandfather was in a small crime family in Italy where he met my great-grandmother. She gets married and they have 2 kids. Around the time my grandfather is 2 and my great-uncle, his brother, is a couple of months old, a lot of shit happens in the family. People getting murdered and whatnot. For great-grandmother lives My great-grandmother leaves Italy with the kids against my great-grandfather's orders. Apparently great-grandpa was a higher up and disobeying him was a no-no, wife or not. Flash forward 4 years. My great-grandmother is remarried, a house in Queens. All the while Grandpa is trying to track her down. One night my grandfather and great-uncle and their new stepdad are doing whatever you did in the 30s in the living room. Great-grandpa busts down the front door with a pistol and immediately shoots the stepdad. Grandfather and great-uncle are frozen in fear on the couch while great-grandfather goes to find their mother, drags her downstairs and shoots her in front of the boys, kidnaps them, and gets caught by police a few weeks later. Grandfather has to testify against him in court. He got a life sentence, but was killed only a few years into it. That's pretty wow. When I was 16, for a school project, we had to write about our first memory, then add a short story about our parents raising us and what they ultimately hoped for us. My father, being the only parent I have, my mother passed away a year before this, told me I was in a coma for over a year as a kid. He just wanted me to grow up as a young man, living every day of my life as best I could and never take anything for granted. At first, I didn't believe I was in the hospital for that long. I just remember waking up in the hospital. I asked my older sisters and brothers, and they look at me and like, you don't remember? My older sister told me my mom would visit me every day and the hospital would let her sleep in my room over the weekends. At that moment it made sense. I couldn't speak correctly through kindergarten to 2nd grade and had to have a professional speech therapist to teach me how to speak correctly. I talked like a 3-year-old with very vocabulary. I think that's not the right word, to describe what I felt and what I wanted. One of my friends moved in high school to a new town and thus went to a new school. She started dating a guy there and was pretty happy. After they'd been dating for a few months, she went with her dad to a relative's funeral and her boyfriend was there. Turns out they were related. They broke up soon thereafter. My buddy told me this one. He swears on his life that it is true. When I was like 15, he was living in Georgia and had a girlfriend who he really liked. His family moved to Los Angeles, so he had to break up with her. He was kind of lonely and depressed at his new school, but a guy in one of his classes befriends him, and soon they are BFFs. But after a year or so, this dude tells him his family is moving to Georgia. A couple of months later, my friend checks Facebook and sees the guy move to the exact same neighborhood where he used to live, within a block or two. He goes to the same high school, and to top it off, he is in a relationship with his old girlfriend. That's kind of sad. I went to a small liberal arts college in Kentucky. I was telling my mother about a professor that I had. Most of my friends were really close to this guy, and he was highly intelligent, if somewhat prickly person. I mentioned his name, and my mother said, "Oh, that's strange. One of my favorite professors in Chicago had the same unusual name." I mentioned this to the professor. Turns out the professor is the brother of my mother's professor. A gal I knew went to Mexico for humanitarian-type work. About to go home over the border, they stop by a rest stop. One girl goes inside. She ends up going missing. I forget, but I think they decided to go home anyway. They passed a truck and saw a body covered in a tarp in the bed. It ended up being their friend, who was cut open. So not all these stories are fun. When I was a kid, I used to get seemingly inexplicable earaches a couple of times a month. The doctors gave me prescription-strength eardrops, and it never really seemed to help. There was some sort of wax blockage or something they could never figure out. I was like that for 5 years until we went to get a second opinion, and that doctor suggested cleaning the ear canal with a pressurized water gun. They start spraying it into the ear. For that reason, it always looks to be affected, and within 10 seconds there is an audible plotink in the kidney pan. Everyone looks at it, and there is a bean in it with a bit of earwax stuck in the end. I had a bean stuck in my ear for 5 years when I was a kid. Turns out when I was in kindergarten, they had done this class project where you grow a plant, and I'd been messing around one day with one of the beans they were planting, and been sticking in my ear and then pulling it out. I guess one time I just pushed it in too far and couldn't get it out, but then assumed that it would come out eventually later on. I never bothered to tell anyone since I figured it wasn't that big of a deal at the time. But then I forgot about it. Sue me, I was 5. The weird thing is, I kept passing all the hearing tests they could give me as part of my yearly checkup. So other than that, the ear infections, there was no sign. That's weird. Usually, things get worse, but you're very lucky, I think. I saw an almost 4-year-old, I'd guess 3, white child walking around a mall with two 25-year-old Hispanic men walking around a mall. I was about to leave, and they, the men, went into the bathroom and said to the little girl, "We're going to go to the bathroom. You just chill here, all right?" The girl didn't look scared, and the men didn't look like they meant any harm. I assume, really hope, the girl got lost and they were trying to help her find her parents or whoever she was there with. But I still feel guilty for not asking the little girl about what was going on and why the men were in the bathroom. Then someone brought up a very good point. Just because only one parent is white doesn't mean the child will look mixed. I know plenty of kids who have one white parent and one black or Hispanic or Asian parent, and they look white anyways. So it could have been dad and friend, dad and uncle, dad, whatever. While leaving her outside alone was stupid at that age, she can definitely go in with him. I bet one of them was her dad. Yeah, that's usually what it is. Let's see. I became best friends with this girl for a year and then moved to Texas, and she started to move to Singapore on the same day. Fast forward a year. And I finally make friends in Texas, but then one of my friends tells me that he is moving to Singapore. He moves to Singapore and becomes acquaintances with the girl. Both moved to Singapore because of their dad's jobs, and they were in different states. Another weird thing, when I moved to Texas, I became best friends with 4 different guys. I met all of them independently, and they all kind of became friends. 3 of them have come out as being gay independently with the other guys. Me and my other friend are the only ones in the group that are not gay. We have all stayed great friends, though. The gay ones saying they would never date each other. Laugh out loud. I attract gay people for some reason. Weirdest story. I have a lot of weird stories personally, but this reminds me of one slightly. I don't know why. I don't know why it does, but I lived in a small, well, most people consider it a town. New Mexico standards, it was a small city. And I hung around with a group of guys, and nothing happened or anything. It wasn't that kind of thing. But 3 of them were named Mike, and 1 was named Marcus. So we had 3 Mikes, me, Ramona, and Marcus. And yes, I realize Mike is a very popular name. And they were all basically, close within probably 6 or 7 years of each other's ages. So obviously it would have been something along the lines of, as a very popular name at that time. But I always thought that was interesting that 3 of my best friends were named Mike. Yeah. Anyway, hope you have enjoyed this video, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.